Hi, families. So I wanted to come on and take a minute just to go over the math test that the kids took right before break. I do have them graded, and you'll see if you go in their seesaw that they have a score. The most points they could get was 34, and then I put their percentage underneath it. This is more for you. I don't really go over the score with the students. We can kind of go over mistakes that we made, and we've done that a little bit in class, but this is more so that you can see where they are in comparison to a second grade assessment. So the first page, they were supposed to represent 403 using place value discs, write in expanded form, which is the addition sentence where they tell the value of each place. So 400 plus 3, I accepted either answer. And then they had to write in word form. If you look up at the top of each of these pages, there's a play button. So the students could press the play button and have it read to them if they weren't sure what these words said. And that applies to each page. On the next page, the numbers were supposed to be in standard form. Standard form is just the normal way to write the number. I say normal as in using the digits. So if we were going to write the number 20, we would write 20. So they were to look at each of these equations or words or the unit form, and they were to write it in standard form. Some of them were meant to be a little bit tricky. For example, the 13 and the 30. And also sometimes they mixed up the places of where they were. So they put the tens and the hundreds and then the ones. So the students had to look and remember that place value goes hundreds, tens, ones. On the next page, you're going to see that there was some equivalencies. So 10 tens equals how many hundreds? 10 tens equals 100. A lot of the kids put 10 tens equals 100, which is correct, but this label makes their answer say 10 tens equals 100 hundreds, and that's not what that equals. So we have to really be careful about our labeling. 10 ones is a 10. Again, some kids put 10 ones equals 10 tens. That's not correct. 10 tens is 100. So they really had to make sure that they had the right label. 10 tens is 100, and 160 is actually 16 tens. For the next page, there was money. If they didn't put the money sign, I didn't worry about it for this test. I more so wanted to see that they could count up the amount that was given in the frame. So those were the answers for that. On the next page, I believe a lot of the students could do this, but the mistakes came from not reading the directions. So skip counting from tens and hundreds, starting at 150. So they had to start at 150 and count to 410, and they could only use tens and hundreds. If students used ones or fives, that wasn't allowed. I know that they're part of it up here, but they needed to read and listen to the directions. Any order that they did this in was fine. So if they started hopping by tens first and then hundreds, or if they did 100 and then a few tens and then 100, it didn't matter as long as they used tens and hundreds to get from 150 to 410. On the next page, they were expected to skip count again, but this time only by fives. That's all they could use to count from 150 to 195. So if they used tens, if they used ones, it was automatically wrong since the directions asked them just to use fives. Comparing numbers, they needed to use these symbols for greater than, less than, or equal to. It also says if the number is not in standard form to write it on the line. This was something that we went over in class, and there were directions given. So we always talk about the greater gator eating the greater number. So in this one, it's 465. For the next one, 10 tens is 100. That's why this line is here. So they had to write 100 on the line. If you see a lot of circles, that means that your student didn't write the number in standard form. So that actually counted for points on the test. The same thing over here. There's a word form and there's an equation. They were supposed to write both of them on the line. The last page was a little tricky. This was supposed to say 600 plus 50 plus 9, but it didn't. It said 600 plus 500 plus 9. So I was actually really impressed that a lot of kids got 1,109. I was even more impressed that this was something that they all powered through and they tried to figure out. Nobody interrupted me to say this is too hard or we haven't done this. They all persevered and they really tried their hardest. So I did take that into account when I scored the test. I obviously, if they didn't get it right, I had to count it wrong. However, on the score sheet, I know which number this is. So I kind of adjusted the score in my own mind. On the next page, it was simple counting by ones. If a student made a mistake on this, most of the mistakes I were seeing was that they accidentally missed a number or they did the number twice or something like that. And then story problems. On the story problems, they wanted them to start at 77 and get to 147, but they're skip counting each time by tens. They're jumping by tens. So if they jumped by tens, it took them 7 jumps. This was kind of confusing for some of them because a lot of the kids looked at 147 minus 77 and they said the answer was 70. But 70 jumps would have actually been 700. 7 jumps was 70 because they were jumping by tens. The story problem checklist shows that there should be an equation, show your work, a correct answer, and a label. On this test, for some of these, I kind of let it slide if they didn't have an equation because some of the equations were a little tricky. But if they showed me their work or they showed me how they got their answer, I counted it. So if a student said 147 minus 77 is 70 and then told me that that was 7 jumps, I counted that as showing their work. If a student didn't do an equation, but they showed me this, I counted that as okay. The label part, they need to say what the answer to the question is. So this question was, how many times does he have to jump? He jumped 7 times. Next story problem, Frosty has 4 $10 bills. He wants 100. How many more does he need? Up here, there were some manipulatives. If they showed the 4 that he had, it probably helped them. They didn't have to do that though. They wanted the students to see that he needed 6 more $10 bills because 4 and 6 was 10 and 10 tens is 100. So things I was looking for, again, this was kind of hard to have an equation, even though a lot of the students put 40 plus 60 equals 100. I was more looking for them to tell me that 10 tens was the same as 100, and I needed the label, he needs 6 more $10 bills. If they didn't put this label, it was extremely important, especially on this one. I needed to know that even if the kids said, hey, 40 and 60 is 100, that's not what they were asking. They wanted to know how many more $10 bills he needed. So if students said he needed 60 more, well, 60 more what? 60 more dollars? And if they said 60 more dollars, that's not answering the question. We want to know how many more $10 bills. And if they said 60 more $10 bills, that's also not correct because 60 $10 bills would be 600. So we really want to make sure that we're paying attention to what the question is asking. On the last one, it was saying that I had pencils and there was 10 in each box. How many do I need? Explain your thinking. The equation for this was just 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10, etc. So some of them didn't write this equation. And again, just for this test, that was okay because it's more of a solving problem anyway, rather than an equation. So if they drew their 10 boxes, or if they showed me 10 circles, or even if they just skip counted by tens from 0 to 100, that was fine. What I was really looking for was them to say that there was 10 tens and 100, and she needed 10 boxes of pencils. At the end of this test, you can go and you can look and you can see what your student's score is over 100. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much.